Hi, welcome to the FindingFive introduction tutorial. We're going to go over some basics on how to use FindingFive to conduct your study, but first we're going to go over some of the bases for our tutorial experiment. For the purposes of this tutorial, we created a fairly simple tutorial experiment that's going to focus on the effect of English language proficiency on Korean EFL learners' perception of the English RL contrast. Some quick background information to better understand what we're doing in this experiment is that the Korean language does not have R as a phoneme. Instead, it's an allophonic variation of the phoneme L. So Korean EFL learners display difficulty distinguishing between the R and L in terms of both perception and production. This phenomenon then leads to the question as to whether or not Korean EFL learners' English proficiency correlates with their ability to discriminate between the R and L found in English. Now for the part that pertains most to the tutorial experiment, we're going to go over how we plan to carry out the study. So first we want to recruit 30 Korean EFL learners as our participants, preferably 15 female and 15 male. Then we want to incorporate the stimuli, so the way in which we're going to test this is we're going to allow the participants to hear 30 words that start with either R or L sounds, and they're going to be asked to click a button that's either R or L depending upon what they hear. Then we also plan to ask for some demographic factors like their age, gender, their English proficiency based on their TOEFL scores, and a few other demographic questions just to determine who exactly we have participating in this experiment. So now that we've gone over the background of the study, we're going to go over how to create the study as well as use some of FindingFive's features. So first you're going to either create an account or log into your account if you have one already, and you're going to see this appear. This is going to be the dashboard page. Now to get to your studies, you're going to click the research button and you're going to go down to the studies tab, which will show you all of the studies that you've either created or that have been shared with you. In order to create a new study, you're going to come to this button right here and you're going to click it so that you have the option to create a new blank study, and you'll confirm that. Now you have this blank slate right here. If you'd like to rename your study, you can click this little button over here, type whatever name you'd prefer, and hit save. But for the purposes of saving time, we already have a study for this tutorial. So now that we're here, you can see that the trial templates has already been populated with information, same thing with the procedure. And we also have an abundance of stimuli and response choices over here. So we're going to get into how to add those into the experiment as well as how to use the trial templates and procedures tab. So the first way to upload stimuli would be to click this plus button over here, and that'll bring you to a small pop-up window that looks like this. So a primary resource that we're going to be using in our stimulus tab is going to be either text stimuli or audio stimuli. So for text stimuli like this one, we can specify the type as text and put the content in. So this is going to correlate to a question that we're going to ask participants later on in the experiment. And we can do something as simple as this, or we could also change it so that it's aligned in the center. It appears in a specific size. If you'd like more information about that, you can refer to the FindingFive study grammar. And then we have options like the audio stimuli, where we would have to specify the type as audio, and the content is going to correlate to resource files that we have on our laptop or on our computer, but we'll get into that later. So again, a first way in which you can upload stimuli would be to do each of them manually, the way in which we just went through, or we can batch upload stimuli. So in order to do that, we would have to create a CSV file that would specify a few different parameters. So first would be the type. So in this case, we have a lot of audio files. So we would want to specify the type as audio. then the content of all of these files. So this is going to correlate with the files that we'll be uploading. Then in our specific case, we wanted to make sure that the audio itself was not visible, so it'll appear as a blank screen with audio playing, and then the name of the stimuli. So when we come back to FindingFive, how it's going to appear in our stimuli section. Now, it's not entirely imperative that the names of the audio file matches the content of the audio file, but it does help with organization. You can choose whatever works best for you. Now what we want to do would be to save this as a CSV file and then upload it using this button right here that looks like an upward facing arrow. This would populate this whole section, the stimuli section, with the information that we had input into our CSV file. And then what we would want to do is go back to the Research tab and enter the files. So now this correlates to all of your resource files, and as you can see here, it's not just audio, it also encompasses documents, images, audio, and video files. So you have the option to batch upload files if you click this button and you upload them as a zip archive. Once you do this and you go back to your study, it will ideally have populated all of these stimuli with the information that you had wanted to put in their specific sections. Now that we have that portion covered, we're going to go over trial templates. So it's important to note that the trial templates do not need to be in a specific order, but again, based on your personal opinion and your organization, you might want to order them in a certain way. So for this specific tutorial, we have the instruction block, which is just a block of our instructions. Then we have the main block, so this is our main one, which encompasses a few of the stimuli that we have over to the right. Then we have our main 2 block, which encompasses the remainder of the stimuli that we have over to the right. And then we have this whole section over here that's a bunch of individual blocks pertaining to some demographic and background questions that we want to ask our participants. Finally, we have this test end block, which is going to correlate to the instructions that the participant is going to see at the end of this study. And this is all going to go into our procedure tab to then order the trial template so that it appears in one cohesive experiment. So there are a couple of different ways in which you can structure your trial templates. So for the instruction, our type has been set to instruction because it is going to be displaying whatever we want it to display for the participants prior to beginning the experiment. So for this one, again, the type is set to instruction, and if you refer to the FindingFive study grammar, you'll see all of the other types of trial templates that you might incorporate into your experiment. This is only one of them. Then for the stimuli, we have instruction. So again, it's very important to make sure that whatever we have written here matches whatever's written in the stimulus itself exactly as the name, because it's going to pull from there. So now when we click the stimulus, we see the type is a text because we want this to appear as a text on the participant's screen. Then we have the content, so what we want the participant to see. And then again, similarly to how I'd mentioned, a few other parameters can be adjusted. You can refer to the FindingFive study grammar to see other properties like alignment and size. And then once we decide that we're happy with that, we can move on to the next type of trial template. So for this one, this trial template we set to basic. So this is going to be a little bit more complicated because we are going to have more parameters to fill. The first, of course, being the stimuli. So we chose which stimuli from this section we wanted to incorporate. And again, we made sure that the names that are over in this section match the names that are in the stimuli section over to the right. Now we also have some cool options where we can decide the way in which we want the stimuli to appear. So for this block specifically, we have the option to set them in a random order or a fixed order. So for this block, we chose that we would like these specific stimuli to appear in any order throughout the entirety of the block. And then over here in this response section, in choosing that we want this response from this section over here to be paired with these responses, we're stating that no matter what shows up, in which order it shows up, they're going to have the option to choose the response that we have here. So similarly to the stimuli, we want to make sure that everything in this pop-up correlates with what we want the participant to see. So again, the name has to match whatever is exactly in the trial templates. For this specific section, we chose to give the participant a choice. So again, going back to the premise of the experiment, we want them to choose whether they're hearing an R sound or an L sound. So that's where this portion comes in. It'll appear as two separate buttons where they can click whether they heard an R or an L. And then over here we have the option to give them a little bit of an instruction asking them to choose whether they heard R or L. Similarly, in this second block over here, nothing is really different from the first block with the exception that we changed the stimulus pattern to a fixed order, which means that the way in which we incorporated these stimuli into this section right here is the way in which it's going to appear for the participant no matter what. Again, they have the option to choose either the R or the L sound based on this response over here, and that's going to appear for each of these stimuli up here. Now moving on to these questions over here, these are all going to correlate to questions for the specific participant. So for example, as you can see, this earbud stimulus is asking them, did you use headphones, earbuds, or a loudspeaker during this experiment? Over here, the proficiency is going to ask them to put their TOEFL score into the database, and all of these stimuli are specified to be text. So the participant will see this appear on their screen. And this is also a fairly basic format in that the type is basic, we just have a singular stimulus, and then we change the type of response that they're going to have in that now they have the option to just type a free response. So instead of choosing, as in this choice response where they chose either the R or the L, or in this other choice response where they can choose either yes or no for certain questions, this choice response is going to give them the option to type out their answer. So this is actually specified as text, which is going to just have a text box appear in which the participant can type in a maximum of 200 characters. Now, once we've addressed all of this and we've created all of our trial templates and we're happy with what we have, we can go over to our procedure tab. So now at this point, we're going to be taking all of the individual blocks from the trial templates and we're going to be ordering them in this procedure tab. So it's important to make sure that the type is set to blocking. This way we can acknowledge that we're going to be placing each of our trial templates into slightly larger blocks. And then we start it with blocks and an open curly bracket. So our first block we're going to name instruction, and it's going to incorporate the trial templates as specified here. So right here we have that it's just going to incorporate the instruction trial template. As you can see here, it's referring to this whole section. And we want to make sure that it's always displayed and that it's immediately shown that the participant can continue as soon as they're viewing the instructions. But that's our personal preference. Again, you can choose to see what your options are in the FindingFive study grammar. Then we move on over to the main portion. So as you can see here, the trial templates main 1 and 2 are going to be pulled from this section of the trial templates, and they're going to be displayed in the fixed order, meaning that they're going to be displayed as main 1 and then main 2. Then we have the section that is the background section, so it asks all of those questions that we wanted answered for us, and again, it's going to be in a fixed pattern because that's what we preferred to do. And then finally, we're going to have the test end, so those instructions that we wanted to show up at the end of the experiment. Now, once we have that whole section completed, it's important that we put in the block sequence. So with this, now we're going to call upon these blocks that we've created up here, and we're going to decide the order in which we want them to appear for the participant. So as we said already, we want the instructions to come first, then the main portion, then the background questions, and finally the test end instructions. Once we've decided that, we have the option to come over here to the Preview Study button. FindingFive will do the work in identifying whether there are certain grammar deficiencies that are preventing you from previewing the study that would also consequently prevent you from running a successful study. Once that's all alleviated, this Preview Study button will allow you to just begin to preview the study, and it'll show you what the participant will see when they click the study. So if we were to click it now, as you can see, it'll tell the participant to read the consent form, follow the pace, complete in one go, and then they have the option to begin the study. And again, everything will appear the way in which you want the participant to see it. You can use this to decide whether or not it's to your liking. And then once you've decided that it is, you have the option to run through the experiment and download your data over here. So now that we've gone through how to create your study and some of the basics, feel free to check out the FindingFive Study Grammar to see what other advanced features we offer, and we hope this helped. Thank you for watching.